That which is exceedingly full of that I shall tell you. Even for yogis it is hard to attain. It is a secret hard to find in the Vedas and the Shastras and among the gods. That which is the supreme Brahma, the self of everything, the embodiment of being, consciousness, bliss, Sat, Chit, Anand, the self of all, verily the supreme, ever abide in that. Of the form of the self is all this, without beginning or end, the invincible, which is neither action nor inaction, ever abide in that. That in which there is no fear of the second, wherein awakens non-duality, wherein the pair of peace and anxiety are absent, ever abide in that. That in which there is nothing that wills, wherein delusion is unknown, wherein again the mind is not, ever abide in that. That in which there is nothing as in Brahma, wherein there is neither the false notion of becoming, wherein the entire world is not, ever abide in that. That in which thought and thoughtlessness, or the wavering due to mental delusion, is not, wherein the talk of delusion is not, ever abide in that. That in which there is no pleasure, nothing to formulate I am the body idea, which is absolutely divested of all will or desire, ever abide in that. That in which any thought devoid of Brahma and defects are unknown, wherein the apprehension of pairs of opposites are non-existent, ever abide in that. That in which actions of speech and body and great periods of time have undergone dissolution, wherein the world does not manifest, ever abide in that. That in which there is no expression of delusion, nor the activity of illusion, where the scene has disappeared, ever abide in that. That in which there is no scholar or scholarship, where there is no one's own side or opposite side, where there is no defect or non-defect, ever abide in that. That in which there are no distinctions such as Vishnu, in which Brahma does not exist, where there is no distinction such as Shiva, ever abide in that. That in which there are not distinctions as real or unreal, where there is no state of cognition, where there is no cognition of the individual, ever abide in that. That in which there is no meditation of Shankara, where there is no supreme state, no form of comprehension, ever abide in that. That in which there is nothing atomic or cosmic, no fabrication of happiness, where the world becomes not, ever abide in that. That in which there is no recognition of the body, in which there is no curiosity, inquisitiveness, in which there is no conception of the mind, ever abide in that. That in which there is no intellectual knowledge, where there is no self full of mind, where there is no conception of desire, ever abide in that. That in which there is no repose of liberation, where there is no form of bondage, where there is no permanent knowledge, ever abide in that. That in which there is no calculation of time, where there is no feeling of sorrow, where there is no perception of body, ever abide in that. That in which there is no dispassion of the individual, where there is no confusion of the scriptures, where I am, of the self myself, ever abide in that. That in which there is no liberation while alive, where there is no liberation of the body, where there is no proposed activity, ever abide in that. That in which there is no conception of beings, wherein there is no influence of separation, wherein there is no distinction of individuals either, ever abide in that. That in which the state of bliss is Brahma, wherein the blissful state is joy, wherein the quality of the bliss is eternal, ever abide in that. That in which there is no manifestation of things, wherein there is no defeat or victory, wherein there is no narration of sentences, ever abide in that. That in which there is no branch of inquiry into the self, wherein there is no yearning to listen, wherein there is no great bliss too, ever abide in that. That in which there is no homogeneity, wherein there is no heterogeneity, wherein there is no difference within, ever abide in that. That in which there is no terrifying hell, wherein there is no wealth of heaven, wherein there is no realm of Brahma, ever abide in that. That in which there is no union with Vishnu, wherein there is no mount of Kailasha, wherein there is no sphere or the cosmic egg, ever abide in that. That in which there is no praise, wherein there is no slander, wherein there is no defect of equanimity, ever abide in that. That in which there is no expression through the mind, wherein there is no contradiction, wherein there is no experience of sorrow, ever abide in that. That in which fear of sin, or the 5 types of sins, exists not in the least, wherein there is no defect of attachment, ever abide in that. That in which the triad of afflictions is not, wherein the triad of individual consciousness is not, wherein the universe is said to be unreal, ever abide in that. That in which there is no generation of knowledge, wherein there is no delusion of the world, wherein there is no form of the instruments of activity, ever abide in that. That in which there is no dominion of the mind, wherein lies supreme happiness, verily, wherein is a state of permanence, ever abide in that. That in which is the cause of peace, verily, wherein is all-round happiness, attaining which there is no return, ever abide in that. By realizing which everything is realized, by realizing which nothing is left to be known, realizing which there is no other knowledge, ever abide in that. That in which defect does not arise, wherein is the motionless state, wherein alone the individual is indeed destroyed, ever abide in that. That in which the self eternally is satisfied, wherein is undisturbed bliss, wherein is undisturbed peace, ever abide in that. That in which is the all-round bliss, wherein indeed is the being realized, wherein indeed is the embodiment of certitude, ever abide in that. That in which I am not, wherein you are not, wherein you yourself are not yourself, wherein is the peace of certitude, ever abide in that. That in which one rejoices eternally, wherein joy flourishes, wherein there is no fear of sorrow, ever abide in that. That in which is the embodiment of consciousness, wherein indeed is the ocean of bliss, wherein the Supreme is directly realized, ever abide in that. That in which is indeed oneself, wherein oneself is verily that, wherein that which is referred to as oneself is not, ever abide in that. That in which there is the bliss of transcendence, wherein oneself is the supreme joy, wherein indeed is the expression of non-difference, ever abide in that. That in which there is not even an atom, wherein there is no blemish of the mind, and wherein there is no such thing as I give, ever abide in that. That in which the mind stuff is dead, one's body and mind have deceased, wherein memory has undergone dissolution, ever abide in that. That in which I'm dead, wherein desire is expired, wherein alone is supreme joy, ever abide in that. That in which the trinity of gods have merged, wherein the body and the rest are dead, wherein there is no activity, ever abide in that. Merging in which there is no exhaustion, merging in which one does not see, merging in which there are no births, ever abide in that. Merging in which reflection ceases to be, wherein waking is unknown, wherein delusion is indeed dead, ever abide in that. That in which indeed time suffers death, wherein yoga undergoes dissolution, wherein indeed the resolve of right association, satsanga, ceases, ever abide in that. That which indeed is the form of Brahman, wherein indeed is bliss alone, wherein indeed is supreme bliss, ever abide in that. That in which the universe does not exist in the least, wherein there is no world, wherein the inner faculties do not exist, ever abide in that. That in which joy alone is, wherein bliss alone is, wherein indeed is supreme bliss, ever abide in that. That in which only consciousness of being exists, wherein there is just consciousness alone, wherein shines the fullness of bliss, ever abide in that. That in which the supreme Brahma is directly present, wherein oneself is verily the supreme, wherein peace is the supreme goal, ever abide in that. That in which the significance of the undivided, wherein evidently lies the support, wherein destruction and the rest are non-existent, ever abide in that. That in which oneself alone is, wherein oneself is verily the victory, wherein evidently is the great self, ever abide in that. That in which is the supreme truth, wherein oneself is verily greatness, wherein lies direct knowledge, ever abide in that. That in which the transcendence of qualities is evident, indeed, wherein evidently is blemishness, wherein evidently is eternal purity, ever abide in that. Wherein directly is the supreme self, wherein directly is the joy of joys, where indeed is knowledge and wisdom, ever abide in that. Wherein indeed oneself is the light, wherein indeed oneself is without a second, wherein indeed lies the supreme bliss, ever abide in that. Thus, the practice of being I absorbed in that has been told. Practice this alone and ever. Brahma I am, existence, consciousness, bliss, Sat, Chit, Anand, I am, undivided, I am, ever joyous, I am. I am wisdom, that is Brahma alone. I am He, the serene and the supreme. I am consciousness, devoid of mind stuff. I am not. I am resolved as that. I am that. I am consciousness. I am He. I am blemishless. I am supreme. I am the highest. I am verily the supreme. Divested thus of everything, be happy. All this residue of mind stuff spoils the purity. Divested of all this, having forgotten everything, is mere dead wood. Renouncing the corpse-like body, remaining ever as a log or a piece of metal, casting aside remembrance too, abide in Brahma alone as support. One who listens to this explanation even once, perhaps, even if one should be associated with great sins, is freed from all and reaches the Most High. Though shining in diverse forms, you are unattached to them, so the Vedas proclaim. Though firmly associated in the heart cavern of all beings, you are the undivided ground, the Self. Om Namah Shivaya.